For a second consecutive season, the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Islanders will play each other in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. This will also be the third time that the teams meet in the playoffs since the 2019 season. In my opinion, this will be a similar matchup to last year, but not one that the Hurricanes can take lightly. And in this video, I will go in depth into what the Hurricanes need to do to win, special teams, 5-on-5, how it compares to last year's playoff series, how these two teams stacked up against each other during the regular season, and what I anticipate the final result of the series will be. This is going to be my first playoff series preview. Let me know what you think about it down in the comments. If you end up liking this video, please hit the like button. If you're new here and if you like the content, please subscribe. I also accept donations via Buy Me a Coffee, and the link will be in the description. And let's get started. So before talking about this year's first round versus the New York Islanders, let's talk about last year's first round versus the New York Islanders. The Carolina Hurricanes won the Metropolitan Division and played against the Islanders, who secured Wild Card 1. Last year, the Hurricanes dominated the season series, winning 3 of 4 games, and then won in the playoffs 4-2. Game 1, the Hurricanes scored 2 power play goals and held onto the lead despite a late push from the Islanders. Game 2, the Hurricanes won in overtime, thanks to an overtime snipe by Jesper Fast. Going back to the island for Game 3, the Hurricanes fell 5-1, but they played a pretty solid game except for a span of a few minutes where the New York Islanders absolutely lit them up for 4 goals. The Hurricanes quickly turned it around in Game 4, taking a stranglehold on the series. The Islanders grinded out a really hard-fought 3-2 win in Game 5, and then the Hurricanes managed to win the series off of a Paul Stastny overtime winner from a very funny angle. Keep that in mind for what we're going to talk about later as far as what the Hurricanes need to do to make sure that they maintain production. The leading scorer for the Hurricanes in that time was Sebastian Aho with 4 goals, 3 assists for a total of 7 points, was +3, one of those goals coming on the power play and one of them being a game winner. Steph Nason came in second with 2 goals, 2 assists for a total of 4 points. Seth Jarvis also had 2 goals and 2 assists for 4 points, and Paul Stastny had 3 goals. The New York Islanders had Brock Nelson with 2 goals, 3 assists for a total of 5 points. Kyle Palmieri, also 2 goals, 3 assists for a total of 5 points. Matt Barzal, 2 goals, no assists, only having 2 points, which was rather uncharacteristic of him as Matt Barzal is one of the best playmakers in the National Hockey League. And Casey Cizikas, who finished 1 goal, 2 assists for a total of 3 points. So in the grand scheme of things, relatively low-scoring series, relatively tight games. Both these teams had to capitalize on whatever opportunities they could get because it was quite the defensive matchup for a lot of sequences, and the higher scoring games were sequences where there was a lot of scoring in a matter of a few minutes and not very spread out over the course of the game. Breaking things down a little bit further, the Hurricanes typically had the advantage everywhere except in the hits department. That's to be expected. The Islanders were a very physical team last season. It's mostly the same players, so they're still a pretty physical team this season as well. One of the best things the Hurricanes did, particularly highlighted here in the Game 2 graphic, was they managed to stay out of the box. The Islanders are a physical team. They're going to take liberties. They're going to do stuff. The best thing the Hurricanes can do is not respond to it, especially this season with as good as the power play has been for the Hurricanes. And if you limit the amount of times that the penalty kill has to be used as well, all the better, because it is very efficient, but you don't want to go to the well too much like last season. That trend continued through the next 3 games. The Islanders out-hit the Hurricanes in every single game of this series except for Game 6, which was ultimately where the Hurricanes won the series. Now, Ilya Sorokin was who the Islanders had in net last season, and this season it looks like it's going to be Semyon Varlamov, as he was the one who really carried the Islanders through the last few weeks of the season to help them secure the 3rd place in the Metropolitan Division and make the playoffs. A lot of the same principles will apply, however, as far as the Hurricanes being able to maintain enough offensive production to win the series. For example, even when you get clean looks on someone like Varlamov or Sorokin, they're not always the best way to score. For example, the game winner in Game 1 was a deflection by Steph Nason that nobody would have stopped. He established a good net front presence, got the stick on it, and nobody was stopping that. Jacob Slavin was the big hero in Game 2, scoring 2 sharp-angled goals. Jesper Fast won that one in overtime on a clean look, which you don't beat Sorokin with many of those, and you won't beat Varlamov with many of them either if you see him this time around, which I imagine that you will. Goals off the rush were typically odd man. The goals that the Hurricanes scored off the rush were typically odd man rushes. The Hurricanes only scored one breakaway goal the entire time, and that was Seth Jarvis. So entering the offensive zone with numbers is your best bet, whether you do it with clean entries or dump-ins, but clean entries would be preferred, and the Hurricanes have trended in that direction this season. And then to finish making this point, Aho's game-tying goal in Game 6 and Paul Stastny's game winner and series winner in Game 6 didn't come from flashy plays. They came from second efforts and shooting at wide angles. In other words, greasy goals. I imagine it would be the same thing for the Hurricanes this season. However, there are some differences this time around. So that's enough about last season. We're going to talk about this season. Both these teams face some adversity, and both of these teams were active in the trade market prior to the end of the season. Both of these teams faced some adversity this season, and both of them responded, but for different reasons. After the first 28 games, the Carolina Hurricanes were 15-12 and went through a tough Western Canada swing where they lost all 4 games. With only having a total of 31 points, a points percentage of .554, an even goal differential, a sub-25% power play percentage, an uncharacteristically low 80% penalty kill percentage, a players-only meeting was held. And ever since then, the Hurricanes took off and never looked back. In the following 55 games played, they won 38 of them, lost 11, 6 overtime losses, a points percentage of .745, 190 goals for, 121 against, for a goal differential of 69. The power play percentage jumped up to 30.6, so an 8.3% increase there. The penalty kill percentage went up to 90.1%. The shot percentages were pretty steady, but the Hurricanes were converting on more chances. When comparing the Hurricanes of last season to the end of this season, very similar metrics, but improvement basically across the board. In the 2022-2023 season, the Hurricanes ended with a 3.20 goals per game, ranking them 15th overall in the National Hockey League. They finished with 3.38 goals per game, ranking them 8th overall in the league. At the end of last season, goals against per game, 2.56, good for 2nd in the NHL. This year, it took a very, very marginal dip to 2.57, putting them at 4th in the league. So not a big difference there, nothing to worry about. The power play improved significantly for the Hurricanes this season. Last season it was 19.8, 20th overall in the NHL. This time it was 26.9 for 2nd overall in the NHL. The penalty kill percentage also improved from 84.4 to 86.4. Not a big difference, but that's probably one more penalty that they killed off this season on average than they did last season. That can be a difference in a period. That can be a difference in a game. That can be a difference in a series. To dive deeper into the Hurricane stats for this season, 82 games played, 52 wins, 23 losses, 7 overtime losses. Overall, the points percentage was .685, 274 goals for, 205 against, goal differential of 69. Shots per game, the Hurricanes ranked 3rd with 33.23. Shot percentage, 10.2, 15th overall in the NHL. Shots against per game, 25.63. And a team save percentage of .901, ranking them 11th. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about the whole thing with the team save percentage, because the goaltending, as we know, had that rough patch where Freddie Anderson was out with his blood clotting issue. Kochetkov had to get caught up. Raanta had some difficulties, and then Spencer Martin was an absolute godsend for the Hurricanes, despite not playing that much. He really helped make a difference in the crease. Now, here's another thing I want to cite. The Hurricanes have home ice advantage through a good amount of the Stanley Cup playoffs should they make it that far. They finished 3rd overall in the National Hockey League and 2nd overall in the Eastern Conference. They will have home ice advantage against everybody except the Rangers and the Stars, and if they get to the point where they're playing the Stars, that means they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, and that's good enough for me. Home ice advantage is incredibly helpful to the Hurricanes. 27 wins, 10 losses, 4 overtime losses, 58 points, points percentage of .707, goal differential of 37, power play 23%, penalty kill 87.5. But they still had a good record on the road as well. 25 wins, 10 losses, 3 overtime losses, 53 points, .646 win percentage, 141 goals for, 112 against for a differential of 29. The power play on the road was stellar. 30.8. Penalty kill held steady at 85.4. Now looking at the final column of how the wins and the losses were divided up, don't bother looking at the overtime losses for the purposes of me making this demonstration here. Overtime losses are typically 3-on-3, 4-on-3, situations that you are very unlikely to see in the playoffs where overtime is played 5-on-5, sans penalties. So the Hurricanes won 52 games. That was 104 of their 111 points. A whopping goal differential of 122 in their wins. Power play percentage at 31.4, penalty kill percentage at 91.0, and the save percentage at .933. In the 23 times that the Hurricanes lost in regulation, the goal differential was negative 54. So for a goal differential in games that were lost in regulation, minus 54 is actually pretty good, because that shows the Hurricanes, when they did lose games, they were within about 2.3 goals. If you account for the few times that they got blown out, like the third period collapse against Winnipeg, that really, really bad game against Tampa, the 4-1 losses here and there, the Hurricanes typically keep games close. And in the playoffs, especially against a team like the Islanders, that is going to serve them well. In the case of the Islanders, the turning point came in the following month. On January 20th, Patrick Waugh was hired as the Islanders coach, replacing Lane Lambert. While Patrick Waugh's presence may not look that impactful on paper, he got the job done. Prior to the 20th of January, the Islanders had played 45 games with 19 wins, 15 losses, 11 overtime losses, a total of 49 points, a points percentage of .554, but where the numbers got really troubling were in the goal differential and in special teams. The Islanders had 132 goals for and 151 against, putting them at a negative 19. Their penalty kill percentage sat at only 73%, the power play percentage at 22.8. After Patrick Waugh took over, 19 wins, 12 losses, 5 overtime losses, for a total of 43 points, but the points percentage shot up enough to where they were just under 600 to be at .597. The goal differential got back in the positive column for a positive difference this time of 5. The power play percentage dipped a little bit further to 16.2. The penalty kill percentage also dipped as well. But it was enough of a change amongst the Islanders to get them to third in the Metropolitan Division with a final record of 38 wins, 27 losses, 16 overtime losses, for a total of 92 points, 7th in the Eastern Conference, 3rd in the Metropolitan Division, 2.96 goals per game, ranking 23rd, goals against per game, 3.14, ranking 19th, a final power play percentage of 19.7, ranking 21st, and a final penalty kill percentage of 72.1. The Islanders traded a 2024 7th-round pick in exchange for Robert Bortuzzo, a good, physical, right-handed shutdown defenseman with size. But the Hurricanes really went all out at the trade deadline, to the surprise of many. First, they acquired Jake Guentzel, who has been a seamless fit, and he will be featured more later in this video, and another depth defenseman in Ty Smith, in exchange for Michael Bunting, Vasily Ponomarev, Cruz Lucius, and Billy Koivunen, a 2024 second-round conditional pick, and a 2024 fifth-round conditional pick. The Hurricanes weren't done at the trade deadline, though. On deadline day, they acquired Evgeny Kuznetsov from the Washington Capitals in exchange for a third-round pick, and Washington retained 50% of the salary. The Hurricanes found the second-line center they needed, and they found the top-line winger and constant scoring threat that they needed, all within 24 hours of each other. So to talk about the season series between the Hurricanes and the Islanders, the fourth game is going to be kind of a separate topic from the first three. The Hurricanes won the first game on Long Island 4-3 in overtime. The Islanders won 5-4 in a really excited game in PNC Arena. The Islanders beat the Hurricanes again on December the 23rd by the same score of 5-4, this time in regulation. And then lastly, the Hurricanes won the final game of the season series in Long Island on March 19th. Some things to note here. As aforementioned, the Hurricanes had their turning point with the season on December the 12th. They took off and they never looked back. The first two games took place before December the 12th. The two games that took place before December the 12th, the one on November the 4th, the Hurricanes battled back and managed to win that one because they were down 3-0 at one point. The most important game, I think, to factor in here is the one that I have the extra stats on screen for, and that's the fourth game. That was after the trade deadline. You have two new big factors there, Guentzel and Kuznetsov. Minus a late game push by the Islanders, the Hurricanes pretty much dominated this game in every way imaginable. Shots on goal, face-off, power play. I looked at the Corsi as well. The Hurricanes, I think, had a 65% Corsi throughout that game, so they owned the possession. The Islanders characteristically led in hits, and I think the Hurricanes were overall the better team defensively in that game. They got a little sloppy in the third period, but as far as roster comparison and how the Islanders are playing under Patrick Waugh, the fourth game is the one that could be most indicative of how the series is going to go. The fourth game of the regular season parallels what we're going to see in the playoffs in terms of the rosters, how differently the Islanders operate under Patrick Waugh, and how differently the Hurricanes operate with the additions of Jake Guentzel and Evgeny Kuznetsov. So this cool little chart right here from NHL Edge, it's very simple, but it's also very explanatory. This shows when teams spend a lot of time in the offensive zone, spend a decent amount of time in the neutral zone to negate the amount of time that they're in the defensive zone and have a good transition game and are good at zone exits. And teams that spend little time in the defensive zone tend to face less high-danger chances. In terms of possession, the Hurricanes, as you can imagine, are definitely the better team. 46.6% time in the offensive zone compared to the Islanders' 39.7%. Carolina spends 18.6% of their time in the neutral zone as opposed to the Islanders' 17.5%. And in the defensive zone, the Hurricanes are there 34.8% of the game as opposed to the Islanders, who are there for 42.8% of the game. Looking at 5-on-5 team analytics, which is where possession metrics are the most important. Shot percentage, the Islanders were a little bit ahead of the Canes, 7.7 to 7.3. Save percentage, 930 for the Islanders, 919 for the Hurricanes. Not drastically different, but it makes sense with the goaltending tandem that the Islanders have, why it would be like that, and how the Hurricanes had a rough stretch in the beginning with the goalies. PDO, Islanders have a little bit of an edge of 100.6 to 99.3. Corsi, Hurricanes have a definitive advantage, 60.1 to 47.6. Expected goals for, they're pretty close. The Hurricanes have 172.9 versus the Islanders 172.1. Expected goals against, the Islanders are 174.2. The Hurricanes are at the good end of that metric with only 151.4. Scoring chances, the Islanders generated 1,780. The Hurricanes generated 2,011. Scoring chances against, the Islanders gave up 1,912. The Hurricanes gave up 1,452. Percentages coming out, the Hurricanes had 58.1 scoring chance for. The Islanders had a scoring chance for of 48.2. High danger for, high danger against, 57.4% to 49.4%. So with the way that a lot of these possession metrics work, particularly anything driven by Corsi, anything above 50 is good, and the higher and higher it is, the better. If your opponent is below 50, it's a very, very definitive advantage. And where the Hurricanes also have a pretty good advantage is in the high danger conversion percentage of 9.9 to 8.0. To put it simply, the Hurricanes, as it stands right now, are more likely to regain possession, maintain possession, and score with possession than the Islanders based on these analytics. Now, possession often translates into shot attempts, shots on goal, chances, high danger chances, so on and so forth. In terms of shooting, scoring, and shot percentage, the Hurricanes are the chart on the left of each graphic, and they have an advantage in all of them. 2,694 total shots on goal, 274 goals with a 10.2 shooting percentage, versus the Islanders, who have 2,438 shots on goal, 240 goals, and a 9.8 shooting percentage. Now here's where the Islanders start to have an advantage. Semyon Varlamov will likely be their starter. Frederik Andersen will likely be starting for the Hurricanes. Now disclaimer, I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to goalies, but when I look at these charts, it seems like as far as low percentage shots, Semyon Varlamov nearly never gives them up. Wide angle shots, it doesn't look like he lets a whole lot of them in, and he's played particularly well in the last month. So the Islanders are probably going to start him and ride the hot goaltender until the wheels fall off. It's the same thing with the Canes and Freddie Andersen, but he's looking pretty good himself. Particular normal high danger areas, he's giving up a little bit too much on the wide angles and everything there, but the Hurricanes have really good shot suppression. They're good at keeping teams on the exterior, so he shouldn't see too many shots like that. Not enough to make a difference in the series as a whole, but the problem with it is there's a potential that both of these guys at some point will get pulled during the series. Thing with this Islanders goaltender tandem, in the event that Semyon Varlamov does not perform or gets injured, Ilya Sorokin can jump in, play off Sorokin, he can steal games. So in comparison to Pyotr Kochetkov, he has a definitive advantage, I would say, in all aspects of the game, but we also have a very limited sample size of Kochetkov in the playoffs. And if he does see the playoffs this season, it'll be the first time since 2022. The Islanders have an advantage in the goaltending department in terms of them being a tandem. If Sorokin finds his game again in the event that he's put in the net, the Hurricanes showed that they can beat him last year, but it's difficult to do. And a lot of weird low percentage shots, a lot of shot saturation, getting him moving side to side, set up screens in front of the net. That's your best chance to beat him. I won't spend too much time talking about the Islanders forward core. It's pretty much the exact same as last season. These guys, most of them, absolutely love to play the physical game. They like to hit. They will be physical. They'll try and get under Carolina's skin. The Islanders are an identity team, but that doesn't stop them from having some super dynamic players. Primarily Bo Horvat, Matt Barzal, Brock Nelson are guys that I think of as having very complete games and playing very high-skilled games. Matt Barzal is one of the best playmakers in the National Hockey League, and he uses his vision and his edge work together very, very well. He prefers to be a distributor, but when Matt Barzal decides to have a nose for the net and create his own time and space, he knows how to use it. So that's someone that the Hurricanes got to watch out for. Bo Horvat, one of the best in the game at setting up in the high slot, whether it's 5-on-5 or the power play. So you got to take shooting lanes away from him. Brock Nelson, very complete player, a good mix of skill and grit, very physical, but can also put a puck in the net, has 33 goals on the season and 34 assists. Kyle Palmieri helps out not only with what he does on the ice, but him being a veteran presence. JG Pageau really made a name for himself in the playoffs with the Senators, so he's always a constant threat to score in the playoffs. Matt Martin needs no introduction, and neither does Cal Clutterbuck. Both those guys are out there to lay the body on people and try and turn games into wars of attrition through physicality. The Hurricanes don't need to try to match that physicality pound for pound. Take hits to make plays. Don't get drawn into stupid shit after the whistle. Now, as of right now, the Islanders are missing a very important piece on the back end. Noah Dobson is still day-to-day on IR, but this is still a pretty solid defensive core. Adam Pelech is the one guy in this league I think that is remotely close to Jacob Slavin in terms of being a shutdown defenseman. Biggest difference is he's more about separating player from puck than puck from player. While he can poke check and will poke check, he is another one of those guys on the long list of Islanders players that like to lay the body on people. He's really good at it. He does it cleanly. He denies a lot of zone entries. Ryan Pollock, veteran defenseman as well. Alexander Romanov, and then you have the other Sebastian Aho, Mike Riley, who is currently helping out with the power play with Noah Dobson being out. Robert Bortuzzo, veteran presence, right-handed shutdown defenseman, who they acquired on December the 8th in the trade, helps to bolster the depth on that blue line. One of these guys is coming out when Noah Dobson comes back. If I had to take a guess, maybe it's Bortuzzo, maybe it's Mike Riley. It'll be one of those two. And speaking of the power play, let's talk about their special teams. 19.7 power play, 21st in the NHL. Penalty kill, 72.1, dead last in the NHL. Like I said before, Horvat is one of the best guys at setting up in the high slot. Brock Nelson has a very powerful shot, and he likes to walk it to the top of the circle and shoot. Kyle Palmieri works really well in and around the net and below the goal line. Matt Barzal can take over a power play. He's really good at finding open ice. He's really good at passing. He's really good at finding open ice. He's really good at creating open ice. In a 5-on-4 or a 5-on-3 situation, he tries to dictate the terms a little bit more. You're not going to stop everything Barzal does. He's one of those guys that you just have to mitigate the damage that he does. Second power play unit is not nearly as good as the first one. There is a large gap, in my opinion, between these two power play units. The one thing that will help that out is when Noah Dobson comes back. I imagine Noah Dobson coming back, they might shuffle the power play units around a little bit to see if they can get them working a little bit better and everything like that. Penalty kill, not remotely close to Carolina, though. So the Hurricanes have a definitive advantage in special teams overall, but they really have one in the penalty kill. The Hurricanes can go to the well on the penalty kill multiple times over. They literally have 8 to 10 forwards who can kill penalties and all 3 defensive pairs that can do it. That being said, the first penalty killing unit is significantly better than the second one. So here is where the big differences for the Hurricanes come in. And in my opinion, these will be the biggest factors in the series overall. Since the Hurricanes acquired Jake Guentzel and Evgeny Kuznetsov, they are 15-4-1. Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, and Jake Guentzel have played 17 games together. For a comparison, have played 17 games together. Aho has 12 goals, 12 assists for a total of 24 points. Seth Jarvis has been on a goal-scoring tear. 14 goals, 5 assists, 19 points, plus 17. Jake Guentzel has been a perfect fit on that top line. 17 games played, 8 goals, 17 assists, 25 points, plus 16. And he's fitting in really well with Seth Jarvis, and Guentzel is fitting in really well with Seth Jarvis and Sebastian Aho. Looking at their possession metrics, everything is significantly higher with Jake Guentzel. For example, Corsi 4 between Seth Jarvis and Sebastian Aho and Jake Guentzel. So Seth Jarvis, Sebastian Aho, Jake Guentzel together had a Corsi percentage of 60.96. Without Jake Guentzel, Aho and Jarvis had a Corsi of 56.83. Fenwick, 62.23 with Guentzel. Fenwick 62.23 with Jake Guentzel. 55.78 without him. Shots for percentage, 62.09 with Guentzel. 54.82 without. Goals for percentage with Guentzel, 80%. Without, 69.70. Expected goals for percentage, big difference there as well. 65.78 versus 53.26. Scoring chances for, 62.58 versus 53.08. High danger chances for, 68.42 with Guentzel, 55.12 without. And then we go into what the Hurricanes, and then we looking at the biggest strength that the Hurricanes truly have, that has been their strength all season long, and has probably been the best thing. And then, of course, the heartbeat and the lifeblood of the Hurricanes is the defense. Orlov, Chatfield, Slavin Burns, Shea, Pesce. They have been remarkable this season. The defense has been absolutely remarkable. And now the Hurricanes officially have a scary good top six to go along with the great 200-foot game that they have, the suffocating forecheck, the airtight defense, the good 200-foot games. The best defense in the National Hockey League. There is no reason that they cannot win this series. So now that we've talked about stats and metrics, matchups, and all that type of stuff, let's talk about what the Hurricanes need to do to ensure that they win this series, and I will tell you what I think the final result is going to be. 1, the Islanders play a very physical game, and they're going to try to irritate the Hurricanes and draw them into stuff after the whistle. As long as they don't fall for any of it, they will hopefully be the less penalized team in the series. If the penalties are close, or if the Hurricanes are less penalized, you have the second best power play in the National Hockey League going up against the penalty kill that finished dead last, and that's going to be a huge net positive for the Hurricanes right there. Number 2, the Hurricanes have home ice advantage, and they do really well with that because of being a defense-first team and how much depth they have when they can dictate matchups. It goes really well for them. If Jordan Staal is out there shutting down the Horvat line, that opens up the other 3 lines that are the scoring lines to make some noise. Have quick transitions, forecheck, puck retrieval with numbers, suffocate them in their own zone, don't let them out. They'll get even more frustrated, they'll take even more penalties, and that's more time that the Hurricanes spend on the man advantage, where they may have a bigger advantage over the Islanders than they do over any other team in the league, including ones that were eliminated from the playoffs. Take hits to make plays. The quicker that you end this series, the better, because, like I said, the Islanders will hit. They will try to turn it into a war of attrition through physicality, whereas the Hurricanes tend to win wars of attrition through speed. But the biggest thing the Hurricanes can do not take this series lightly. Do not walk in here and think that you're going to steamroll them. Now, I don't think the Hurricanes have that mentality, especially not with Brind'Amour being behind the bench. But never underestimate the capabilities of a team that barely got into the playoffs and scratched and clawed their way in. The Islanders benefited from a coaching change. They are now really well coached under Patrick Waugh. They have an excellent goaltending tandem, of which they have 2 guys who can steal games and be difference makers against a team that historically has struggled to score. However, bringing in Jake Guentzel and Evgeny Kuznetsov and making the changes that they've made to the system appear to have solved those issues. So based on everything in this video, and based on everything that I have said and everything that I have researched, my final verdict is the Hurricanes will win in 5 games. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And please consider donating to my Buy Me a Coffee. The link will be in the description. Thank you very much. Y'all take care, and I will see you next time.